Heavy fighting rocks the Syrian border town of Kobani. Amateur video purports to show Kurdish fighters continuing their pitched battles against Islamic State militants. Kurdish forces have reportedly taken about 70% of Kobani out of the hands of Islamic State, which has spent months besieging this town on the Turkish border.
A massive storm may be bearing down on the American Northeast, and people are rightfully concerned about how it will change their lives for the next couple of days and into the immediate future. At the same time, however, we must not take our eyes off the sands of the Middle East, where battles are being fought, alliances are being made, and a president may indeed be keeping his head in the delusional sands of negotiations. He is resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, focusing on U.S. defense policy in the Middle East, and a former senior analyst at the U.S. Department of Defense. Let's welcome into MidPoint, J. Matthew McInnis joins us today. Matt, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We are looking at news here. First of all, earlier today, that the Kurds had pushed ISIS out of Kobani after a 4-month battle. Now, we are being told by the Pentagon, they say the battle for the Syrian town of Kobani is not over. They will not declare it over. So we're getting conflicting reports here. Again, if you will, the American public, and again, needs to care about this and needs to understand, why is this one battle so important to what's going on in the fight against ISIS?
Well, Kobani has been the front line within Syria between ISIS, the Kurds, and frankly, the interest of Turkey, the Syrian government, and frankly, the U.S. This has been the focus of most of U.S. Central Command's airstrikes or support for rebels in the area. And it's something that really Kobani is the ability for the Islamic State to be able to kind of have free flow of movement around the region, from the Turkish border into Syria. And it's something that could really trigger, if the Islamic State was able to capture Kobani, could really trigger additional interventions from other states. And it was something that was really critical for the Kurdish-oriented rebels to be able to push back and be able to preserve their capacity to fight there in the region.
Seeing as it may be close then, do some of the critics have to back up and admit that the airstrikes have worked and are working?
Well, I think the airstrikes have always had a certain amount of impact, positive impact, for the U.S. and its allies against the Islamic State. But the thing is, the airstrikes can help, cut certain logistical lines. It can help, shape some of the fighting forces' behavior, push them further underground. But it doesn't really defeat the Islamic State. That really requires someone on the ground to be doing that. And frankly, in this situation, it's been the Kurds for us.
Should we put any faith whatsoever in Bashar al-Assad and his Syrian fighters to be able to do this on their own, or are we just kidding ourselves?
Now, I think we've long passed the point where Bashar al-Assad, at least his current army, even though it's been backed up by Lebanese Hezbollah and the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they are actually not capable of really recapturing the rest of the country. And frankly, I think Bashar al-Assad recently has frankly admitted that they're not in a position anytime soon to be able to retake the rest of the country from the Islamic State or Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Qaeda affiliate there. So I think this is really the challenge for us, is, there's many challenges in Syria, but this is a particularly difficult one because, frankly, who is going to be able to really push back the Islamic State inside Syria?
There have been a couple of reports recently that indicated Syria may already be fractionalized into 4 separate areas, and simply stated there will be absolutely no way to put them back together again into a working country. Do you agree with that?
I think there's a very real possibility that we're going to be stuck with a fragile and fragmented Syrian state for many years to come. Again, unless there's some very dramatic, intervention, by the U.S. or by Turkey or by some other major player that would turn the tables on this, I think you're going to end up in either, a broken up state, or perhaps as the parties get more exhausted, at least among the non-Islamic State elements, you're going to get towards some type of potential agreement or stalemate or ceasefire, maybe sometime in the future. But otherwise, I'm very unhopeful for any good resolution to this situation.
30 seconds, and we'll take a break and come back. But in that half minute, are we reaching a point where, when this country does fracture itself, we are looking at a brand new base of operations for so many different terrorists? We will again be looking at decades to try and bring them under some kind of control.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the concern that Europe has, is the concern the U.S. has. It's frankly even a concern that countries like Russia have. that a broken up Syria becomes a base for terrorists worldwide.
It never seems to end. They always seem to find a new place to nest. If you would, please hold on a few moments. Breaking back, we're going to make a turn to Iran, the country President Obama is determined to talk into nuclear capitulation. And another case where Israel has become a major player in the possibility of striking a deal or even blowing one up. We will continue with that and so much more, where we question everything right here on MidPoint. Let's welcome back to MidPoint, resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, focusing on U.S. defense policy in the Middle East, former senior analyst at the U.S. Department of Defense, J. Matthew McInnis. Matthew, let's go ahead and look at Iran for right now, because the one thing that strikes me is when I read a headline that talks about the Obama administration saying that our goal is not to eliminate Iran's nuke program. That smacks right in the face of what so many in Congress are afraid of at this point, because they will tell you flat out you can't trust them. You're not getting an honest answer from them. They are doing things even though they say they're not. How can the president get to this point of saying, I want to continue to talk to them about capitulating, when talking does absolutely no good with this country?
Well, I think Iran is in a very difficult position. It's one of the things I've been very frustrated with the American approach to the negotiations, because I think that Iran is in a very dire economic situation that could, frankly, we could really leverage and push for, if not full capitulation, a very, very good deal that would keep Iran from ever being able to produce.
How do we do that? How do we do that? What is that leverage then that you talk of?
Well, I think given that there are economic problems, that we have the ability to really push hard on issues of of monitoring and ability to really pull back not only their fuel, but be able to dismantle centrifuges to the point where it's almost impossible for them to rapidly pursue a particular nuclear program. The real challenge, of course, though, is the fact that Iran cheats, and that everything we know about the Iranian nuclear program we have found out through people revealing it, through secrets being exposed. They've never come forward willingly about anything regarding the nuclear program. And so this is something that the need to have very heavy monitoring and complete intrusive capacity to get in the state, that's what we really need. And I frankly doubt we'll ever get that, though.
What is it we really can do here? Because wouldn't it be fair to say that if America was to go in and say, you can't do this with your nuclear program, however, we're going to help you here in certain areas, the Iranians would immediately strike back, tell their people that the Americans are the ones keeping you poor, they're the ones keeping you underfed, they're the ones keeping the money out of our hands. How do you fight that? Because what we're talking about is centuries of belief by the people that the government does not lie to them.
Well, it's an interesting question, because I think you look at how part of the reason why I think the regime has even approached this idea of talking with the U.S. and potentially looking for a nuclear deal in the past year and a half is because President Rouhani was elected partly on the idea that the Iranian people are frankly very frustrated with the direction that the country is going. They're frustrated with their leaders, and it's something that that Rouhani has certainly approach this as we need to take a different tactic with the U.S. I don't think Rouhani is a new Gorbachev. He's not someone that is bringing about, profound change to the regime, as some around here in Washington believe. I think he's trying to find ways to save the regime, and I think they recognize that they're in a very dire situation, and that the Iranian people are very frustrated with it. And I think, frankly, we could use that as part of our leverage here, too.
Let's do this when it comes down to looking at the money here. The administration has paid $400 million in cash assets to Iran. They will have released a total of almost $12 billion by the time the nuclear talks are scheduled to end in June. And this is all just part of, we'll give you some money, let's keep the negotiations going. Let's be frank here. Is President Obama simply being played for a sucker by the Iranians?
I think there's a real possibility of that, and it's something that I've been really concerned about, the direction that we're going to, make a very bad compromise with Iran in this situation. That release of money, even though it was part of the agreement, and it is frankly something that's kind of helped keep the Iranians slightly afloat during this period. But at the same time, the drop in oil prices in the past few months has had a tremendous effect on Iran's ability to plan, ability to budget, is having to make very serious prioritization decisions within its own foreign policy, economic policy, domestic policies. So I think that this is something that we're probably in a situation, given Iran's history, where they are probably cheating, and we are probably getting screwed here, frankly. But it is something that I do I do think that there are ways that we could push this and to our advantage. I just really doubt this administration is going to do that.
With about a minute left here, there's a lot of reports out that Iran is threatening a first strike against Israel right now. So as America continues to deal with Iran and Israel being our strongest ally in the Middle East, how does that play into all of these discussions? How should it play in?
Well, and this is certainly tied to the confrontation that we're seeing, across the region between Iran and Iran's allies, its proxy forces, Lebanese Hezbollah, and those of Israel, the U.S., and our allies there in the region. And I think, after the recent Israeli airstrike that killed several Lebanese Hezbollah and Iranian leaders there inside Syria near the Golan Heights, that Iran is looking to respond to that. But frankly, I think they're intimidated to really escalate the situation right now. And so I think ultimately you will see a restrained response, but it's something that it's just an indication of how dangerous the situation is right now. And it's something that I'm hoping that with the U.S. and Israel can really drive and manage and contain the situation and be able to ensure our interests are being served.
Dangerous indeed. Perfect word to use. J. Matthew McInnis, thank you so much for your expertise. I'll look forward to speaking again.
Thank you.
Some believe Republicans recently caved into Democrats on a piece of very controversial legislation. Others believe the GOP played a perfect counterstrike. The truth? Next on MidPoint.